Lotus Dreams here, coming at you with another review, and today I'm gonna review him. Why do I say him? Because I can't pronounce his name, Roboute Guilliman or whatever you call him. Um, I'm gonna call him RG, just to make it simple. It's in his initials and fine. And he is gonna be the upcoming big character from Gathering Storm 3. And I'm here to show you some of his rules, or all of his rules outside of formations and so on, and see what he can actually bring. The last Primarch we had was Magnus, and obviously that guy was a really, really good one to release. Very expensive, but very powerful indeed. And we're gonna see what this guy can do and how he performs. Alright, so first of all, Roboute Guilliman, or RG, is 350 points. So he's pretty high point cost, higher than your average Lord of War slot, but not actually in the kind of super heavy class. He's a little bit lower than that, but still rather expensive. He is a monstrous creature and a character at that, so he can be challenged, and obviously that has some advantages and some disadvantages too. Um, Being a monstrous creature, he has always the same rules as everybody. He has move through cover, which is obviously nice because he's going to be foot slogging no matter what, because being a monstrous creature means you don't embark into any kind of transports of any kind, and you don't join anybody of any kind unless you have specific rules that allow that. Um, he also causes fear. He has Hammer of Wrath when he charges. He is relentless, which is irrelevant because his weapons are melee and assault. And he has Smash, which is not redundant because there is actually abilities that mess with your weapons. For example, Eldar. And just in case he loses his sword somehow, Smash is going to make him automatic AP 2 at his base strength of 6, and also allows him to make a smash attack, but obviously that's probably not gonna happen because smash attacks are pretty bad. His purified stats line is that of a monstrous creature with some extras, basically. Weapon skill 9 is pretty good. It's demon level, pretty much. Ballistic skill 6 is decent enough. He hits on 2s and rerolls to 6s. He has the shooting attack, so that will actually come into play. And Ballistic skill 6 is obviously nice. He's strength 6, which doesn't really matter because most of the time he has his sword, but just in case, as I said, if he loses that one, that will come into play. Okay, now toughness 6 means he is still, you can still hurt him with small arms fire because he doesn't have the big toughness block that some things of this point class have. Um, Although it's a good profile, there's one issue. Just like monstrous creatures, stuff that ignores your armor save most of the time is also strength 8 or strength 9. So that's cannon profile or multi-melter profile, for example. So toughness helps against small arms fire, but against everything else that actually does ignore your armor save, it's meh. 6 wounds is decent. I mean, normal monstrous creature size pretty much makes him survivable enough to actually go somewhere. Initiative 6. For some reason, his initiative is not that high, but as we will find out in some time, that it won't really matter as much. His attacks is 6. That's a good stat line, I think. 6 attacks is really, really a good one. He has leadership 10, which is best you can get. 2 plus save, also best you can get, and a 3 plus plus, so a 3 plus in 1 save. Now that is pretty huge because obviously he's really hard to support in terms of saves and so on, and a 3 plus plus is a pretty good one because obviously he's gonna be a big target, and if something is worth 350 points, then you probably have a lot of firepower at hand to shoot at him, and then 1 save will help him a lot. Also, don't forget, his model is pretty big, so cover saves are not necessarily his thing. He's also a monstrous creature, so he does not get cover from area terrain anymore. He has to be obscured 25%. And also, although he has moved through cover, he's going to get slowed by cover a lot, so he should not go in there. Remember, he's not a flying monstrous creature, he's just a walking monstrous creature. So that's 6-inch movement or 3d6 when moving through cover, and being such a expensive model, you would rather not have him getting stuck in some kind of ruin. So the 3++ all is really good because you can practically go into open ground and just walk forward for all that matters. Right, he has some additional special rules coming up here. I only listed the generic ones. He has more than this, but these are the ones from the rulebook. He's Eternal Warrior. Most importantly, he is Eternal Warrior because this toughness 6 doesn't matter against D and all against the stuff. Eternal Warrior and Feel No Pain means it makes him even more resilient against these small attacks. Nothing can outright kill him. And Feel No Pain is going to come into effect unless the attack is instant death or D, which is stuff that will target him probably, but against everything else, Feel No Pain obviously enlarges his wound pool by 2 because you expect it to make him to make your 2 Feel No Pain saves on 6 wound average. Adamantium Will. Adamantium Will obviously great because Leadership 10 helps against magic already, and Adamantium Will makes it easier to deny. Obviously, one way of dealing with these big blocky monsters is just enfeebling them or do whatever you want, some kind of debuff, even dominate them at some point. That will help dealing with them, and this is something that helps you denying that. Also, if there's Nova powers and so on, and you have him near your troops, you can choose him as the guy that denies, and they will also profit from that. He has chapter tactics, obviously Ultramarines, so he can only use them in the Ultramarine army unless he is used differently in the Gathering Storm or in the formation. So you can take him as a normal Lord of War slot. You have to obviously take a Combined Arms for that because an allied detachment does not have a Lord of War slot. So if you want to use him as a as an ally for a different kind of army, you would have to go with another HQ and 2 troops at least. He is fearless, so he doesn't run away, which is nice, makes sense. He has fleet, being a Primarch, he's still pretty speedy. Fleet helps you also a lot with walking forward, because quite honestly, he needs to go somewhere. And if you run every turn, you might make it into close combat at some point. So fleet is the best thing to make sure he runs faster, because you can reroll your run move, and you can reroll the charge distance too. So making sure that he can actually get somewhere. He also has precision shots and strikes, more fluffy than anything else. But just in case you're not in a challenge, you can allocate your hits to specific models with precision shots and strikes, which is nice and can help take out that hammer in the back or whatever can hurt you the most without actually targeting them. Being a character, obviously that doesn't always work because if you're in a challenge that gets overridden anyway. And being a character is nice because you can challenge the opponent too, but at the same time you get stuck against something like Grots, for example, because there's a run turret, he's going to challenge you, he's going to take one attack of yours, and then you have to attack the Grots. That sucks. So being a character is not all nice and everything, because in this case you obviously would lose one round of combat just to attacking Grots, which sucks for such a big model. Alright, that's his normal special rules, and now we go to the really special rules. So first of all, Armies of the Imperium reroll morale finning peer tests while he's on the battlefield. Alright, so that's nice, because it's not an AoE, you can have him wherever you want to, everything is gonna reroll. Now, obviously, that scales with low and high leadership at the same time. Why? Because a high leadership reroll is almost a guaranteed pass, and obviously, low leadership armies like rerolling their low leadership so they can stay longer in combat. So, first thing that comes into mind is Space Marines don't necessarily need that. The only thing that can happen to them is that they get pinned. If they fall back, that mostly is redundant. But if you're running a lot of Devastators and so on, it can be nice to keep them there. And obviously, Imperial Guard and all that stuff that you can ally helps. It helps a lot when they do that. The only issue is this kind of ability is not necessarily good for supporting stuff because he's so expensive and the detachment he comes with is also expensive. So you're looking at a 350 plus HQ uh, plus 2 troops. So we're talking about a good 500 at least points of Ultramarines. So if you want to support your Imperial Guard with this, that is going to be a bunch of points, even when you take him in the formation, because obviously it's going to include all 3 characters, and that is expensive as well. Um, then the second special rule is you can choose to enact Devastator, Assault, or Tactical Doctrine once per game, in addition to what you already have. So the normal one, and then the Gladius, and whatever you want, and it will affect all Ultramarine models. Now read that carefully. Models, not chapter tactics. So that's interesting, I think. It's basically another round of something. Although it says Ultramarine models and not Ultramarines with chapter tactics, so I assume that it applies to everything, and that would be actually a much better buff than what the usual stuff is, because you're basically rerolling once most of the time with everything. And since dreadnoughts and so on are not taken as often, you can support a lot better. Um, Also, RG's leadership cannot be reduced by any means, and he rerolls Deny the Witch test. So, in addition to having Adamantium Will, he can also reroll that test. So that's a pretty good deny test. And his leadership cannot be reduced. That means he basically ignores these penalties from psychic shrieking and all that stuff. Um, it's easy. It's not as easy to kill him. He also has more resistance against Mind War. There's a bunch of powers that play around leadership, and he would ignore all of these modifiers, which is really good. So you have a higher chance of denying, and if they go off, you're even more resistance against those. And then you have Feel No Pain, because most of these say no armor and no cover. So you have your invuln save and Feel No Pain against them. So it's pretty hard to bring him down with Psychic, pretty much. Um, Unless, of course, it is some special kind that ignores these tests as well, which is possible. Um, His Warlord trait is that he has all command traits from the big rulebook. Now, that one is pretty huge because, first of all, it's Warlord trait. It's actually his Warlord trait is having all of them. So that's bad. Why is that? Because Tigerius has a very good Warlord trait, something that is worth taking when you're playing Ultramarines, and obviously make him you can't make him the Warlord when this guy is your Warlord, and honestly, this Warlord trait chunk is really, really powerful because you can play around them with them a lot. So that is a big selling point for him, but at the same time, I'm sad that it is actually a Warlord trait. I would like it if he had those in addition. All right. Um, these Warlord traits are pretty simple. First of all, they can use his leadership rather than their own. It is not really relevant because he is moving forward and so on, but it can be relevant for pinning tests and so on. The good thing is they have then leadership 10 with rerolling, so basically fearless. Um, at the same time, the second one is really, really powerful for a combo because you have to use your lowest leadership values. For example, the Grots will be at a much lower initiative leadership, even with the Runt herd around and so on. And you can actually use this one to play around with the Librarius Conclave because you can go for Psychic Shriek and all that good stuff. And lowest leadership value within 12 inches is pretty nice. That's something you can work with when you're trying to go for Psychic Cheese. Obviously, also they will run away faster. They will fail the fear test faster that he will cause being a monstrous creature, and makes it easier for them to run away so he doesn't get stuck. Because that's one of the big problems these models have. They get stuck in a unit, they don't run away, and here they are. If they're fearless, nothing you can do about that, but in this case, if they're not fearless, it's a higher chance that they will run. Alright, Warlord and all friendly units within 12 have the move to cover special rule. That is really good. Helps a lot with vehicles, for example, so they don't get immobilized. Helps with big blobs of guys. Pretty much a really, really good all-around thing. It's one of these Warlord traits where we say, oh, that's not bad. I could have had Army Wide move to cover move through ruins and stealth in ruins, but this is pretty okay, and he just has this as a part of all of his Warlord traits, which is good. Alright, the next one. Warlord and all friendly units within 12 add 1 to the distance that they can move when they run or charge. Now this one is good. Why? Because he is foot slogging, as I said, and this guarantees +1 to that. So actually we're moving 6, or 3d6 pick the highest when moving through cover, and then we run d6 re-rolling +1, because you can re-roll that with fleet, and then you can charge your 2d6 re-rolling 1 or 2 dice +1 when you charge. So that's good. Also applies to your models around you. Uh, Maybe relevant, maybe not, but Marines are not usually the close combat army. Um, but might be useful when you're going with some sort of support for him and you go with a Laborious Conclave, for example. In the shooting phase, you warlord and all friendly units within 12 inches of him reroll to hit rolls of 1. That is okay. The issue is you already have chapter tactics, and most of the time you will be rerolling once with everything, no matter if they're around 12 inches of your warlord or not. So that one is not such a big deal, but the good thing about it is your warlord rerolls to hit rolls of ones, making his ballistic skill 6 essentially ballistic skill 10, because he's hitting on 2s, rerolling to 2s, since he rerolls once anyway. Alright, so that is a good one, but probably redundant in a Ultramarines army. For everything else, pretty nice. If you're thinking Blob Guard and so on, that's something they like, because they don't have chapter tactics. And the last one is the exact same, just in the close combat phase. That's good, because obviously he does not have any rerolls to speak of, as far as we know. So rerolling once is going to make sure that he doesn't miss as easily. And then also supporting stuff around him, rerolling that, which is probably not that likely, but you never know. Alright, so I think in the end, a really good chunk of rules, but most of these are pretty situational. Just because none of these are coming into play every time. The only thing that does come into play every time is the run and charge thing, because he's gonna run most of the time, and the rest is good to have in certain situations, pretty much. All right, so his armor. His armor of fate is what we already saw, 2+3+ Feel No Pain, Eternal Warrior, and all that good stuff, but it also has a special rule. So if he is slain, place a marker, and at the beginning of the next turn he either returns with D3 wounds and a 4+, or he is removed entirely. He has to be placed as close to the marker as possible and 1 inch away from any models, and if the game ends before that, he counts as being slain for all intents and purposes. Now, something is worth mentioning here before we talk about anything of the likelihood and so on. If this works, it can keep on working, because it says every time Guilliman is slain, place a marker, and then you see if you remove him or not. So he has the ability to get up and down like a jack in a box if you punch him down, and with his profile, D3 wounds are still worth a good chunk, and it can obviously take him into close combat, get slain, get up again. He keeps annoying stuff. If he's around, stuff gets better. So if he gets down, stuff around him gets worse. And if he keeps coming back, he's gonna be in a pain in the ass just by model. The issue is this is a 4+ roll. This is highly, highly, highly risky. Because 4+ is a 50-50. You're basically doing a coin flip for a 350 points model to come back that then has another chance of coming back. So that is that sounds pretty risky to me. He also is reviving somehow, but I'm not sure if he can charge on the turn he comes back. Most abilities that work like this will not allow them to charge, but at the same time, something like Celestine, as far as I know, can attack after she's slain like that. The other thing worth mentioning here is at the beginning of your next turn, he either returns. So if he's killed in your turn, then the enemy has a full turn of no Guilliman until yours is your turn starts. So there's a pretty good chance that he's not coming back before that. He, I think this ability is weird, like really, really, really weird. Because there's so much RNG involved. I really don't like high point models having so much RNG. It's already bad enough with D and stomping. But this is this kind of, yeah, you have to pass the 4+ to get him back. Then you have to get a good roll on a D3, otherwise he's just gonna go down again, which will take him out for the entire enemy turn too. And all of his Warlord traits and so on only work if he's alive. So he's not alive technically while he's a marker, because we're not sure if the armor restores him or not. So that is I think it's an issue. It's an RNG-based concept around a big guy. Obviously, this is something you can play around with because your opponent's like, yeah, if I bring him down, he might be coming back and so on. So this is a little bit of a tactical option too, because you can send him forward and say, yeah, slay him. I might get him back. If not, he soaked up a lot of firepower. And on that one turn where he comes back, he has the power to kill a Titan. If he doesn't go through cover, by the way, because assault grenades again. But he's totally capable of wrecking Titans and all that stuff if he gets in there. So you have to deal with him. And this basically says he's RNG's suit too. That's pretty much how I would describe it. Alright, what weapons does he have? So first of all, he has a Strength 10 AP1 melee armor bane, concussion, soul blaze, touch of the Emperor, whirling flame, sword. And obviously a power fist. But they count as one weapon. They're merged into one weapon profile pretty much. And obviously that is some numbers. So strength 10, it's the second best after D that you can get. AP1 is the best one. So excellent stats right there. Armor Bane, best thing ever. Why? Strength 10 Armor Bane is probably, apart from Strength 10 Armor Bane Tank Hunters, is probably the best thing they can take out any kind of armor targets, and that's obviously Imperial Knights. Everything, Chaos Knights, Imperial Knights, I don't know, Stompers, he can kill that one. He has a very good chance of penetrating stuff, has a very good chance of actually dealing the D6 instead, and that's a good profile. He is pretty much designed to kill these kind of targets because that's where his attacks, his 7 to 8 attacks come into play the best, and where he will make back his points. The only issue is, if you think about it, all these walkers, all these gargantuan creatures move 12, and he only moves 6. So the issue is, if they don't want to, they don't have to fight him necessarily. You have to somehow block them or something else to actually make it work. Otherwise, they will decide when they attack him or not. Now, obviously, that's a good zone tool, but just mentioning this is profile is effective against them, but that doesn't matter at all if he can't get in there. Alright, concussion. Concussion is really important. Why? Because his stat line is not strong enough to take out a Wraith Knight in one hit unless he rolls really lucky. So, Concussive will drop their initiative to 1 the next turn and will win him these extended fights, and is basically only good against very high wound pools that he needs to chew through before he gets out of combat. But then Concussive actually kicks him pretty nice. It's a good rule to have if you're watching Primarchs battle each other, so on. Concussive is actually really powerful. Soul Blaze is just annoying. It's basically his sword is glowing, so it must have Soul Blaze. Derp. Soul Blaze does deal some additional wounds here and there, but is very unreliable, and it's only melee close combat, so yeah, I don't know. They probably have different problems when they're in combat with a Primarch than having Soul Blaze. Touch of the Emperor. Any rolls of 6 are resolved at strength D. Now that one is a good one, because the one thing that strength 10 cannot do is it cannot ignore Pain on a gargantuan creature and so on, and for that matter everything that's toughness 6 or above. And basically D is instant death. So instant death is really nice and has a good chance of removing something from play with no saves of any kind allowed. And obviously also good against these big chunky vehicles and so on, because you can take them out in one swing if you're lucky. So Max says basically he's if there's a 1 to 10, he's a 9.5. He's almost as good as a Strength D close combat beast, but not quite. And for 350 points, I think that's a fair deal. His Stormbolter, so to say, or when I want to call it, is range 24, strength 6, AP2, assault 3, rending. As I mentioned, it's going to hit on 2s rerolling once, so 2 plus rerolling. Assault 3, rending AP2, so you can try to kill transports, I guess, with that one. But most of the time it's probably used to soften up a target. And most of the time I wouldn't even use it, I would rather run. Just because getting him somewhere is more important to me than shooting something with a glorified bolter. It is a pretty good profile, but most of the time it's probably not going to be worth shooting with unless you need something taken out really, really badly. And then last but not least, he can change his attacks for a number of hits equal to the number of molten units within 1 inch against all units. So basically, as you get surrounded by multiple targets and so on, you don't have to decide what you're engaging next. You can basically attack them all at the same time with a number of hits equal to that. Now that one is awesome because obviously we don't have anything else really, and the big upside of using this is the auto hits, pretty much. Nothing else. I don't know. It's a little bit weird of an ability, but it can be very, very nice if you're having multiple units against you and you don't want to split up your attacks and then overkill something or not. So that basically takes away from that. Alright. That's it. But before we end this, I want to say something about how I would use him. So first of all, let's go back to the base profile. Why? Because monster creature character. There is a big, big, big problem here. He basically, if you want to stop Roboute Guilliman from getting anywhere, park a Rhino in front of him. Why? He can't go past, he can't go around, he's getting slowed down, he doesn't get anywhere, and after a while he gets shot into pieces. It's just the way it is. There is a hideous amount of big firepower in armies like Tau, and they can take him down. There is no question about that. And for 350 points, you can bring a good chunk of Daka with high strength that can eat through his armor save and his Phenopain at some point. Is it worth doing so? Not necessarily, but basically your Ultramarine opponent is going to play with 350 points less. So you have more firepower to bear to get him down. And this guy is moving 6 inches plus his run, if he's lucky. If he's unlucky, he doesn't. And that does mean he has some glaring issues getting somewhere. Now, how do we solve that? First of all, we have the Electro Swap. So Tigerius, obviously, the obvious choice here, is one of the best Psykers you can get. High mastery level, rerolling his abilities, rerolling one psychic test, put him in a drop pod, drop him down, swap with him, and there you go. Primarch is moving 24 inches per turn, plus 18 if you get the, I don't know what it's called, the other psychic power. Basically, you're banking on fulmination to get him forward, and as soon as that happens, he's going to be a huge threat, and the enemy has to deal with him and has to shoot at him, and cannot say, oh yeah, well, Guilliman is slowly walking towards me, I don't mind. I'm going to deal with him when it's time. So basically, you're shoving him into their face, and he's still going to be able to charge if you swap him. So that's pretty scary, and obviously something you can do very well with Tigerius, and since you have to take an HQ anyway, might as well take a good one. Same applies for everything else that the Librarian's Conclave can do. So, for example, invisibility can help him out a lot, since he can't be focused as easily and he can't get downed as easily. And deals with one of his glaring issues. He is not a Gargantuan or anything like that. That means if the D comes down on you, or if the Stomp comes down on you, you're getting removed from play. And that is a scary thing, because you're moving in there. If you can't kill it in one swing, which you probably will not, then it's gonna probably fight you back. Has a D attack, has a D3 stomps, and can stomp you in the face. So basically, Gargantuans and so on are in the same price class, and they are always at an advantage when they fight you. So in this case, visibility can mean a lot, and you should be wary that he might not even be able to survive against these kind of things, but it can help a lot because he can then have the initiative, he can have his concussive, so the monster creature is gonna go last, and it's also probably gonna hit on force because his weapon skill is really high. That's one selling point that he has. So if you're finding big guys and so on, psychic support becomes more and more crucial. And if you're fighting shooty armies, psychic support becomes more crucial because you need movement options. And that's pretty much the only movement options you have, because nothing else can be used for him. Can't put him in Land Raider, can't put him in Drop Pod. That's just the way it is. Doesn't have Deep Strike, so no Deep Strike Arenos, even though he does have some kind of glorified Terminator armor. Apparently, it doesn't have a teleporter module. Sucks to be him. And you have to deal with that. The only issue I have with him is he does not have the same power as Magnus. Magnus is way more expensive, but Magnus is perfect in all sense. He is expensive, and he basically makes up for that for his rules being exactly what you need, what you expect of a big Psyker. Guilliman does not necessarily have that. He has decent support all around. None of his abilities are game-breaking, but they're all really good. So he is basically the king of mediocre. I don't know, it's pretty hard to describe, but that makes building an army around him or building an army that fights with him harder. Now, there is one thing you can do. Obviously, the Gladius Strike Force has some objective spam and so on. You can practically use him as a one-man army to do the good old 3-mission tactic thing. You put them all in a triangle, and you move up with your rhinos, and the Guilliman is going to stomp along them and sit on that objective. If something comes close, he's going to probably murder it, something that Ultramarines not necessarily can, because they can equip a captain to deal with that, but that's not the best option you have in your codex. And you can run some Thunderfires, maybe, whatever you like, to support him. You can also add a Combined Arms, because obviously Gladius Strike Force doesn't allow you to take him. But you can try to make some points back by getting free transport, for example. So you're basically playing the same points game, although you have a big ass chunk of wounds and armor in your middle that can take out most of the stuff in close combat. The only issue with the tactic is Tau and so on don't necessarily care about that one. So as long as you're not having the psychic support, which makes him even more expensive, you have an issue there. Magnus does not have this problem. Magnus has his own psychic support. He does not have to deal with anything like that. He's also a flying monsters creature, so he's going fast anyway. It doesn't matter what he does. And I mean, you're paying 300 points more. That's a big difference. But if you imagine, all right, I'm going to run a Rebellious Conclave to get Guilliman where he needs to be, you're looking at the exact same price. You're having some more models, but you're having inferior invuln save because obviously Magnus has his 2+ rerolling, so it's pretty much unkillable at that point. And the support that the Ultramarines can give is pretty equal in points after that point. And the Psykers themselves can be attacked, so have to be protected as well. So there comes a chain of problems how you want to use him. It's funny though, because you can use him as that, and I'm really excited to see how he plays out when you play him, just because of the fact that I'm not sure how he will work. With Magnus, it was actually pretty clear what would happen and how he works, because he is perfect. He is basically the pinnacle of a Psyker. He is not a mediocre stat in any point. Even his close combat is better since he has a demon weapon and so on that does have force, which is pretty nuts. Not a demon weapon, but a force is already something like worth mentioning right away. And honestly, Guilliman, I don't think Guilliman could necessarily kill him. It's really hard to do that, and in terms of survivability and so on, he probably has an ace over him. But as I said, he has some really interesting tricks, and I think you should try him out. And if not, you still have a great model, I think. I just expected him to be better at what he does. I expected more support than this. Um, and that's just basically what Games Workshop rolled with. Let's make him a little bit cheaper. Let's make him a little bit more affordable in small point games, and let's sell some more models. I think that was the approach here, because it shows that his point costs are Land Raider class, but not really out of the box. And since they released a lot of huge detachments when they started Gathering Storm, I think that's a refreshing thing to have. I don't like running 3k points in a detachment to get some weird special benefit, because it's never going to happen. I'm not going to play 3k points. And Guilliman is something that I can run in a list. He does not take away as many points as Magnus, so he doesn't screw over any kind of tactics not resolving around him. And I think that's a good thing. That's something I would like to see from Games Workshop more. I think fitting something in the game that can actually be played is more useful than having a great model that can never be fielded because it's too expensive. Pretty simple as that. All right, that is it for me. I hope you enjoyed watching, and leave a like if you did. Subscribe for more. As soon as Gathering Storm 3 gets out, I'm gonna review that one entirely, see what the formations make of him. But so far, this is some interesting stuff, and I want to see how he actually performs. All right, thanks again, and happy wargaming.